Kids in the Bible. The Good Parent and the Good Garden. In the beginning there was nothing, until God created everything. God said, "Let there be light," and boom, there was light. Whatever God told to be would immediately be. Pretty amazing, huh? As a grand finale, God made his most treasured creation, people. Adam and Eve were grown-ups, but they were still God's children. Everything was new to them in the special garden home God had made. As a good parent, God helped them live, work, and play. God said people were made in his image, which meant no part of creation was as much like God as they were. This was God's idea. Adam and Eve would have kids. Their kids would have kids. Then their kids would have kids. And pretty soon, the world would be full of God's image-bearing kids. It was a wonderful idea. God loved kids. Adam and Eve would look like their father, and he would teach his kids to rely on him to give them anything they would ever need. Under God's care, Adam and Eve would learn more about their Father, follow his teaching, and grow on the outside and on the inside. As they walked with God, who is wise, they would become wise. A wise person is someone who knows God's ideas and understands how to act on them. That's why God made a rule in his new creation. Adam and Eve would not eat from the tree called the tree of knowledge of good and bad. Adam and Eve didn't need a tree to grow in wisdom and learn about good and bad. God would teach them. But one day, a serpent came. This wasn't an ordinary snake like you might see at the zoo or in your friend's terrarium. Instead, he talked, and Adam and Eve listened. They didn't squeal and run away the way some of us do when we spot a creepy creature. They talked with him. They didn't know he was an expert at lying, and that his words were a trap door to terribleness. You see, the serpent hated God. He wanted to destroy God's treasured creation. The Bible gives the serpent a few names you might recognize, like Satan, the accuser, and the father of lies. The serpent asked Eve, "Did God really say you can't eat from any tree in the garden?" That wasn't true. God had given Adam and Eve tons of delicious fruit trees. Their home was a snack factory. Eve corrected the serpent, telling him only one tree was off limits. Adam had told Eve what God said, so Eve tried to tell the serpent. God said, "You must not eat it or touch it, or you will die." Eve didn't get the rule totally right. God never said anything to Adam about touching the tree, but remember, she was kind of like a kid. She was still growing. The serpent knew she was still growing, and he used it as a weapon against her. He said, "You will not die." Instead, he told her that eating from the tree would make her wise. Eve wanted to be wise. But does wisdom come from a tree or from God? God's children had no reason to trust the serpent and every reason to trust God. But Eve still reached for the fruit and ate it. And Adam took a bite too. They wanted wisdom, but they didn't want to get it God's way. They took the shortcut, realizing too late it was a trap. When Adam and Eve made this choice, they sinned. Sin is when we don't believe God's ideas are good and step outside of them. Sin always leads to death. It's as sneaky as a snake, seeming to be a good thing at first, and then turning poisonous. As soon as sin entered the world that day in the garden, everything went wonky. And when Adam and Eve heard God coming, they hid. Sometimes kids hide from their parents to be silly, but this wasn't a game. Adam and Eve were full of shame, that icky, horrible feeling when you know you've messed up, and they were full of blame, that thing we do when we pretend our mistake is someone else's fault. Yes, the serpent tricked Adam and Eve, but the sin was Adam and Eve's fault. They had not trusted their father. As a loving parent, God told Adam and Eve the consequences. He had designated everything to be life-giving, but things would now be different with sin in the world. Work, growing a family, and relationships would all be frustrating and painful. Even so, there was good news. One day a child would be born, and he would defeat the sneaky serpent forever. The child was God's special plan to bless the whole world. Dear God, you are a loving Father. Grow me in wisdom so I can follow your words no matter what. Amen.